What's the most embarrassing thing a parent has done to you? Had my first boyfriend in middle school and brought him home one time. At one point my mom made him bring me my clean laundry, and by that I mean a single pair of pink High School Musical underwear. I cried from embarrassment, but he was actually pretty cool about it and comforted me. Then he cheated on me. My mother insisted on seeing exactly what I bought for clothes to make sure they weren't too baggy until I went away to college. When I was 17, we were buying jeans at the Gap, and when I wouldn't basically do a fashion show for her for every pair of pants I tried on, she crawled her 58-year-old self under the door of the dressing room where I was trying them on. I'm a guy, and the dressing room had a line out the door. Everybody saw, everybody heard. Calling all the neighborhood moms one day when my younger brother noticed I was growing pubic hair at 12 years old. My mother made it a point of conversation to let all 10 moms know I was becoming a man, and the calls went on for about an hour and a half because apparently puberty is that stimulating a conversation for the neighborhood ended up with a lot of "such a little man" comments from the neighborhood, and a couple of dads pulling me aside and letting me know that no one needed to know, as if I had something to do with it. Ugh. My mum pulled up my skirt, causing me to involuntarily flash a room full of people. At a Christmas dinner, I was absolutely mortified. She wanted to check for self-harm scars on my thighs. Apparently, I've never self-harmed before. She should not be allowed to consume alcohol. I came home from school with head lice. Instead of telling the teacher, who would send a letter home to everyone without specifically naming which child they noticed had lice, my mother rang every person in my class that she had the phone number of. She would have a chat with the parent, or "yeah, she has head lice, so you need to check your kid." I probably got it from someone in my class, and the whole class likely already had lice, but kids don't realize that, so the whole class were calling my dirty and saying I infected them. It was horrible. I was hysterically crying while she called people. My mum's done plenty of embarrassing things, however the thing that jumps out the most would be what happened to my sister. She had been dating this guy for a year or two on and off. Now normally not important, but for the story it is. He's black and my family is English, so we're like paper white. This was all back when my sister and I were in high school. It was Christmas. He and some family friends were invited over and everything was going great until it was time for gifts. My mum thinks she's hilarious. She gave my sister, who was a virgin still, a card pack of positions to try. Also remember, there were family friends there. She was already mortified by that. Worse was yet to come. He opens his gift and it has something else in it, and a box of glow-in-the-dark condoms. Mum, it's so she can find you in the dark. Everyone laughs nervously. Daffuk. My mom and I used to try and embarrass each other. It was fun. One day we were at Safeway and I was in the toilet paper aisle, and there was a very hot guy in there as well. She held up a mega pack of toilet paper and yelled, "Hey sweetheart, this will be perfect on your sensitive bum. How's your diarrhea right now?" I thought I would die. In like 5th grade, there was this girl I was friends with and we would always joke around and make fun of each other. So one day my mom was picking me up from school, and me and the girl were walking out together, and she said, "See you tomorrow, Dumbo." I had big ears as a kid. Thankfully I grew into them. My mom heard her say that and wasn't having any of it. She stormed over and started yelling at her, saying things like, "Don't ever talk to my kid like that again. How would you like it if kids made fun of the freckles on your face?" She started bawling. I was so fucking embarrassed. My mom was yelling at this innocent little girl in front of dozens of kids. We left and I didn't talk to my mom at all on our way home. Thanks mom. I love you, but that was mean. I have aggressive Crohn's that started showing up around 8th grade. My mom took me to all of my doctor appointments, which were all pretty embarrassing, because no teenage boy wants their mom involved in their butt-related illness. One particular visit, we were about halfway through the appointment when she whipped out a Cool Whip tub. Turns out, the following night I used the bathroom and it didn't all go down. So she thought it would be helpful to load that up in our poor people Tupperware and haul it on into the doctor, so he could look it over. He had the confused "what am I supposed to do with poop in a Cool Whip tub" face for a good 510 seconds, then politely dismissed it. Who'd have thought that there isn't any medical knowledge to be gained from fishing poop out of the toilet, refrigerating it overnight, and schlepping it up for an office visit. After I submitted a job application to a manager when I was 16, my mother barged up and started going on and on about how I was really shy and not much of a people person. Yeah, That's what a manager wants to hear about an applicant for customer service. When I was a senior in high school, I had left the lights on in my truck all day and had to call my dad to come jumpstart my car. Now my father is 6'1" and has a very large belly. Motherfucker rolls up in cloth shorts and no shirt to jumpstart my car. Then there was the time a few years earlier that my mother had sent him up to school to give me a sandwich before a football game. The man's boxers were longer than his shorts. I was 10 years old and my two best friends, girl and boy, were sleeping over that night, and my dad, the oversharer that he is, proceeds to tell my friends the story on how I was conceived in the back of a car on a cold night somewhere. I was so mortified and my friends were just as uncomfortable as I was, and we collectively agreed to ignore the whole idea. Also, he brought the cake out to the lounge wearing only his undies and a bow tie. It was a rough night. I had C-cup boobs when I was 11 years old. My mom loved to loudly talk about them to anyone who would listen. Yeah, she's only 11. You wouldn't think from the way she's filled out up top. Then I'd start crying from the humiliation and she'd tell me to lighten up. To preface this, my mom has a way with words. As in, she doesn't always know what a word means but uses it anyway, or she mispronounces things quite frequently. So I have this psychotic fucking hatred of feet and have had it for as long as I can remember. Not really sure why. Anytime feet are brought up, my mom never fails to tell whoever she is talking with that I have a foot fetish. We have tried to explain to her what that actually means, yet she does not seem to get it. I am 35 now and this has been going on for at least 25 years. It is kind of mortifying. My two little brothers find it hilarious and thus I am known as the foot fucker. When I was young, we had a pajama day at school, but I always just wore my boxers to sleep. Well, obviously a kid can't show up to school in just underwear, but I was too little dumb to understand that. Why my mom allowed me to go and even drove me there, I have no idea. It was the most embarrassing day of my life, and the school had to call my parents to come pick me up halfway through the day. My dad, influenced partly by Bad Boys 2, decided to mess with my boyfriend on my first date by acting like a hardus. He filled a whiskey bottle with tea, and when he answered the door he chugged the whole thing while staring my boyfriend down, then tried to break the bottle over his own head. The day was cancelled due to the hospital trip, and I became known as the girl with the batshit insane father. Don't concuss yourself this time became the running joke once I was able to get a date again. When I was 5 or so, my prec did a play based on Noah's Ark. It was a prec attached to a church. We were instructed that our costume was supposed to be raincoats, rain boots, umbrellas. I didn't have any of those things but begged my dad to get me at least one of them so I'd fit in and follow the guidelines. Fast forward the night of the play. I'm frantically scanning the audience because my dad is always late. He finally shows up and brings me a life jacket. I had to stand up there with all the kids in their little raincoats and a life jacket. I was really embarrassed. Dad's defense was that I was the only kid who would have survived the flood. I can laugh now, but I sure wasn't laughing then. When I was a senior in college, I was working a part-time job. They offered to make my current position full-time once I graduated. Before I got a chance to respond, my father found out and contacted my supervisor expressing concerns about the offer and the fact I was still in college. How my father found out still boggles my mind, but when my supervisor told me that my dad called him was probably the most embarrassing thing either of my parents have done. Maybe not the most embarrassing, but certainly top 10. My mom went through this phase where she would talk during movies, specifically about what's going on in the movie. She was also terrible at paying attention to what was going on, so oftentimes what she was explaining was incorrect. In addition, she would try to talk over the movie. Mom would occasionally have to yell to make sure she was heard over the action scenes. Imagine, if you will, watching the aftermath of the stampede scene from The Lion King and the person next to you yelling Simba is sad because her dad died. A long time ago, my dad was a policeman in one of the British forces, and not some titherated flatfoot, but the taser-wielding fast car case sort. One morning he's doing a morning shift, on patrol in a big Land Rover, with all the toys of that era, multiband radio broadcast unit, tannoys, and, best of all, a rear programmable LED board so that you can type messages to the car behind you, thinking, at the age of 15, that it would be awesome to get a ride to school in one. I readily accept his offer of a lift, which he wasn't supposed to do, but who cares, it was all smiles and gloats as he pulls into the car park. Watching my peers and enemies gape their jaws at such a majestic vehicle, I jumped out, try and pass off a blasé cheers dad, slam the door, and nonchalantly stride off towards my comrades. 5 seconds later, the sirens blurp out a high-pitched squeal. I turn to look at the departing van, and see on the lead board "Daddy loves you 2xxx. You simply cannot imagine the shit I put up with at school for the next 3 years. All policemen are bastards.